All right, everyone, welcome to Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown. I'm Anthony, and along with my two brothers, Pete and Tom, this is our Brodown episode of the 2.5D platformer category. All right, in this category, Peter will be defending Tomba. Tom will be defending Klonoa, Door to Phantomile, and I, Anthony, will be defending Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. For those that don't know, this is our Brodown episode, and in these Brodown episodes, we have a courtroom-style debate where each of us defends a game that we chose from this genre, here at the 2.5D platformer genre. And based on the arguments made throughout the episode, we will rank the games individually to come up with a consensus and declare a winner. If at the end of the episode you want to hear our unbiased analysis and true opinions of each of these games, go back and listen to the prior 3 episodes in our main series, Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown. All right, let's get this started.
I would like to start, if you guys don't mind.
Order in the court. But go ahead.
I'm going to start with a big gun, and it almost serves as like a initial statement or whatever, opening statement. But this is a 2.5D category, right? 2.5D platformers. But really, Crash and Klonoa are very one-dimensional games. You really have just platforming. You know? And Tomba is so much more than that. There's some RPG elements where you're acquiring items and using them later on to either help out NPCs or to, strengthen, gain an ability or, strengthen your stats. There's experience level that you gain also. And I think that's really fantastic.
Wait, so because it has RPG elements, it should win a 2.5D category?
Well, it's not just RPG elements, right?
Sometimes people just want to play a platformer when they pick up a 2.5D platformer.
Well, maybe if they also have a time machine.
That might be it.
A lot of people nowadays don't really want to just play a platformer.
Well, I don't know that that's true.
It's just like in Crash Bandicoot, like you don't, and Klonoa, both of them, you don't, for lack of a better word, evolve in any way. You don't get stronger, you don't get faster, you don't learn new moves.
Well, in Crash, you do get stronger. There's the masks that you pick up that will give you varying different levels of invincibility.
Objection.
No.
Well, you never got the invincibility when you were playing.
Well, that's true, but I got masks, and if you get one mask, you have a free
That's
hit.
like health. That's not...
Yeah, no, that...
Well, it's not an evolution in a RPG sense, but, I mean, just to go back, I mean, it's...
Don't harp on the word or term RPG.
Yeah, fine, I know. I want to harp on it because I think it makes your argument look weak, but what the thing with Crash is, it is very unique as far as you're kind of going in every direction on the while platforming. You're going up the screen, you're going down the screen, and you're going left and right, and sometimes multiple directions in one level. So I think it just really encompasses that 2 to 3D platforming, and sandwich right in the middle there is 2.5, the average of those two.
But all these games have those elements where you're kind of going in different directions in the same level, right? That's not a point for Crash. And Crash is the most three-dimensional of the 3 games, so if we're going to give it a point for that, I don't see why we would, but
only half a point, 2.5 to 3.
Oh, right.
But no, I think some of these elements that you're mentioning are, some people will like them. I'll give you that. But it's going to be a turnoff for a lot of people as well. Like we even kind of touched on it in the episode about how, some of those Metroidvania aspects of Tomba were frustrating at times and not really fun.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of going back and
Well,
forth. And I will say this, when you said like it crashed going back and forth, you weren't going back and forth to like traverse the same space. You were just sometimes going left, sometimes going right, sometimes going up. Whereas in Tomba, you had to keep going back to some arduous levels sometimes just to like
I mean, that's
progress.
true. And we could debate whether these elements are fun or not fun, but the fact that these elements are there says something positive about the game. Because really, in Crash and Klonoa, and I'm going to keep saying the term one-dimensional, but you're really just doing the same thing, and it's getting a little harder. It could have been a NES game, or these could have been NES games with better graphics. Although Klonoa's graphics were kind of not that great.
Ooh, I'm sure Tom will want to respond to that.
Like there's just like not even a little bit. Like, let me get a thing that makes me jump a little higher, so maybe I could reach a part where I couldn't reach earlier. There's like nothing in these games.
Well, I think there's some skill involved, and I will say
Yeah,
with
there's skill involved. I'm saying there's no changes as you play the game
but
from
that's
beginning
not
to end.
true. Crash Bandicoot levels are different. I mean,
The
like for
levels are
example, the
different.
ones where
Yes,
you're riding on the polar
that's like an
bear.
NES game.
Yeah, you're riding on the polar bear and you're getting chased coming down the screen, or you're doing your regular go up the screen, and sometimes you're going left and right, and jumping on things.
I noticed Tom is very quiet.
I mean, there's not much you can say. Like, yeah, it's obvious Tomba has the most gameplay diversity.
Okay.
I mean, there's really no argument to be made against that. It's true, but is that a good thing? Now that's where you can actually
Yes,
argue.
yes, it is. Okay, I rest my case.
Because
I
running
mean,
back because running back and forth for 2 hours, wondering if you're gonna actually accomplish anything in the game, and you're sitting. That's not always the most fun thing.
Just ask you guys who played Grim Fandango.
Exactly. There were legitimately
good
times
point.
where I put on the game and I was like, am I gonna get anything done today, or am I gonna waste 2 hours?
No, I think that's a fair statement. Like I had that feeling too sometimes. Made it feel all that much better. Made me feel all that much better and more accomplished when I advanced.
And I think
Nah,
as far
I felt accomplished when I got past the level in Klonoa where it was like a really difficult, you know, that required dexterity because I was playing a 2D platformer. So
Oh, so the last level, because that was pretty much the only difficult level.
nah,
And there was plenty of parts like that in Tomba too, so that's not an argument to be made against Tomba or Crash for that matter. Not that I'm
yeah,
defending
if you can
Crash,
actually
but
find it, if you could actually find that platforming part
what do you mean?
in Tomba.
because it
Oh,
was so hard to know what you were supposed to be doing.
ah,
Okay, I've said enough.
but so I will say with Crash, I think it definitely had the best replayability of these three games when talking about the different gems you could get per level. Now, obviously, you had your regular crystals that you had to get to complete the levels, but you had gems for completing the boxes. You had different other events that you had to complete in order to get certain gems. There was, the death trails that you could take. So it just lent itself to a lot of extra play to time trials, for example. So like there was a ton of stuff there within the regular game. You didn't need DLCs or like new game pluses or anything, and it was just so I think replayability definitely works in Crash's favor here, and it was unique replayability that you wanted to do it, like you wanted to try to complete, get the gems, beat your time trials. So I think a very strong positive for Crash.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, all three of these games did have good replay ability, but Klonoa is really the only one where you get to truly unlock something for being a completionist.
I thought there was something in Crash about that too.
What do you mean?
There was like another ending, and I remember Pete brought this up
Well,
in the
yeah,
episode.
but
Yeah.
that's not for completing everything. That's just for getting 42 gems. It's still
That's for 91%ing the game or whatever.
yeah. I mean, who makes a big deal about 91%? But in Klonoa, you have to get all of your villagers to unlock the final vision, the true final vision.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
but no, it's a good point. I mean, Tomba, as we discussed, there were, you know, 130 events and only 57 of them were the primary events that you had to complete. So if we're talking about deviation from regular game, or not regular game, but just things that were essential to complete the game versus things you had to do to 100% the game, Tomba had a ton of it as well. And, these events were, maybe this isn't a factual argument, it's an opinion based, but these events were really fun to not only complete, but just encounter. In Crash, it's like, okay, do a time trial on this level, do a time trial on that level, do a time trial on the 25th level.
Yeah, but in
Whereas in
Tomba, it was some of the missions were like, talk to this person, pick up this item.
maybe a couple of them, and those were really the primary ones, like some of the simplest ones, just to continue the story along.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think another really main point that I think works in my favor for Crash 2 is just the iconic nature of him as a mascot and video game character. Uh, I think something is to be said as, all three of these games are on the PlayStation, the first PlayStation. I don't want to call it the PlayStation 1 because it's not really what it's called, but they were on the first PlayStation, and look who came out on top as far as the most popular. Even though he probably didn't wind up as popular as had hoped, Sony had hoped, and maybe Naughty Dog Studios had hoped, but he's still much more popular than Klonoa and Tomba, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that probably has something to do with how well the game sold.
And did it sell better because it was better?
No, because the
We've seen
commercial was more exciting.
Oh, right.
Harkening back to that argument that you made for Shenmue maybe,
Yeah.
or I forget.
Yeah.
But it also has to do with the birth of these three characters. Right? Crash was the first one, so maybe he just kind of beat Tomba to the punch. It's not that he's actually more appealing as a character.
So I would agree. Being born first does make you better.
Says the oldest brother.
Yeah, let's just clarify that. That's what I meant by it.
No, but so you made the point that Sony was looking for a mascot, and naturally, the game that was released when this console is gonna.
Yeah, but let's face it, Tomba and Klonoa were never going to be even in the mascot talks.
We'll never know.
yeah, I don't think that's true. I think Klonoa is a why? What's funny about that? I think it's just as viable as he's just as viable as a mascot candidate as Crash is. Even more so because he actually speaks.
Well,
with a very cute voice.
I was gonna say
maybe
that's
too cute.
Automatically disqualifying him.
I don't know. I feel like Tomba is, in all seriousness, is the coolest of the characters because he's just sort of like this jungle boy living among the world of these pigs, and then he kind of saves the world.
Mm.
You know who else saves the world? Klonoa.
No, Klonoa saves some dream world, not the real world.
Well, it's real to those inhabitants of the dream world. What it is.
That's true, I guess.
He doesn't
I guess Crash saves the world too, doesn't he?
His yeah, whatever. But I will say this, and in all seriousness, I think Crash as a whole has the most interesting other characters other than let's get past the first let's get past the main characters. And just like a lot of those bosses, Ripperoo has kind of lived on in lore, and obviously Neo Cortex has,
but all those bosses are just completely random animals. Like it's just
Yeah,
I mean,
so
and
I mean, it's an
tiny.
animal
Yeah.
world. The mascot is an animal.
no, but they had like, no real connection to anything. They just
Yeah.
were thrown in there, you know? It's like who is Ripperoo? Like, where did he come from?
Well, he's a kangaroo and he's a ripper.
Sounds scary.
I know.
Yeah, but
No, but
that was a similar point, Tom, that I
I
was
don't.
gonna. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, 'cause I was gonna say like you in the main Crash games, you don't really interact with these characters. You know, like you do, like you fight these bosses, but like Tom said, they're kind of randomly placed. Even Cortex, he's speaking specifically of Crash 2 because that's the game that we played in, the one that you're defending. You know, he's just kind of in these quote unquote cutscenes telling you, "Oh, collect more crystals, please." Like it's just like, whereas in Tomba, there's a lot of different characters, cool characters, and you're actually interacting with them and you're helping them, and they're helping you. Like that's
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that Klonoa has the best story out of all of these games. I mean, it's, 'cause, we're touching on it here, but it actually has characters that are involved in the plot of the game, Like,
I'll give you that. For the Tomba story is very Tomba centric.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and without giving away the ending, it actually has kind of like a head scratcher, not head scratcher, but like
Makes
kind
you
of,
think and feel.
yeah, it makes you think and feel. So, I mean, yeah, there's no real argument to be had here against that, I don't think.
Yeah, I just mean I feel like a lot of characters in Tomba and in Klonoa are just sort of like there. Like there's just like a lot of NPCs, especially in Tomba. There's just sort of like a lot. And some of them are cool. I'll concede like some of those characters and some of the villains, but I just feel like there's also just like a whole bevy that are just like there. And
I
you
mean,
can
yeah, you're right, and that's
talk
the
to and say a
RPG.
couple, yeah.
Yeah, that's the RPG factor. It's like not every single NPC character in the game is going to be meaningful or even have a name, but the ones that did have a name that you're, like I said, interacting with and helping, a lot of those characters are pretty cool.
I don't know. I just feel like the Crash ones are pretty like they've just become iconic, whereas the other ones are just sort of like regular things. It's
Again,
like,
that's just because of the popularity of the game.
Yeah, you're conflating it. I agree with you for sure. A lot more people are going to know those.
defend this game and how good it is. No, you can't talk about how popular it is.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen time and again where popular things are not always the best.
Yeah, well,
Let's not have a Brodown. Let's just rank the 3 games based on copies sold. That's what Ant wants to do. No, but I agree with your.
I don't want to return to our earlier episodes.
I agree with your point, but I also, I also agree with what Tom's saying. Like these characters have become more popular in the gaming world because the franchise is more popular. Not to mention because of all these other offshoot type of
Yeah,
games.
I was just gonna say that. Like, these characters were forced to become popular because there was no casts and they wanted to have multiplayer games.
But
So they
who
had to make Tiny
Yeah.
the Tiger, even though nobody cares about him, be
Right.
a character in the game who drives a cart,
but who would be those characters in Klonoa? Like, I mean, if Klonoa, well, I mean, they did have that volleyball game that was only released in the EU, so like, I don't know, but like,
That's a good point, and
yeah, I wonder what characters are in that.
I couldn't imagine. I wonder if maybe a combined Klonoa 1 and 2
yeah.
characters. I don't know.
But I could get a nice volleyball team from the characters from Tomba.
Yeah.
Charles, the witch,
The way.
the wise, the old men.
Yeah, well, they were cool. I'll give you that. But I don't know. I don't feel there was many more.
The people at the Y crossing that you help.
And I just feel like, as far as like the bosses are concerned, like all of the Tomba ones were pigs, and yes, they sort of move differently, but it was really the same thing over and over again.
You're making all
Whereas,
my points for me.
sorry, go ahead. I'll let you speak for me.
No, it's. I mean, if we're talking about boss battles,
Ding, ding,
which,
ding, ding.
which is the name of the
Oh,
show,
yeah.
uh,
So it's worth double points.
I mean, Tombas were basically all the same thing with the minor little twist on each of them. Crashes were so easy a caveman could do it.
Is that a reference that no one will get?
Uh, and Klonoa, on the other hand, had actual like diverse boss battles where you actually had to do different things and use your brain to try and figure out what to do. Not to mention like the ending, like that last sequence of boss battles.
Yay!
Did you really have to do different things though? It was
I
all
thought it was
kind
just
of
throw the enemy into
Yeah.
into the boss. Like,
pretty
Oh,
much.
but
Yeah.
but the parts in between that was different. Like against Joka.
A little different, I guess. I mean, a lot of it is just
And then-
avoiding what's being thrown at you,
And then there was the one
And-
where you had to, load up the cannons in the last
so
one.
you had to throw the
Throw
thing in the
down.
cannon,
Throw
throw it
things
down
down.
instead of throwing it at the actual enemy. Yeah, and then there was one level where it's throwing the enemy at the diamond or whatever it was, but the platform was moving up and down. So it was like, yeah, there's
Well, I mean, that
variations.
was that was how you attack in that game. So of course that had to be a part of it. But
Okay, and how
like,
you
there was the
attacking
one, like,
Tomba was jumping on a pig and throwing them. And that's why you had to
That's
throw
not
him into a
actually
bag.
true because you can it did have where you could swing the mace and everything, but that was never a part of the fights for some reason.
That goes back to my first point.
But anyway, yeah, like in the Joka fight, I think it was the Joka fight, you had to put the go over those colored platforms to turn them all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tiles or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. So there
Yeah,
was a
it's
lot of boss diversity there, and it wasn't like boring and easy like on Crash.
Yeah, I would concede that Tomba didn't necessarily have boss diversity, but the one thing that it did do with these boss battles was very unique and interesting. You don't really find that in games. Whereas the things that were happening in Klonoa, kind of avoiding boss attacks and then throwing something at the boss. And, there's some differences that we just discussed, but like, that's not that interesting. Whereas the Tomba bosses were interesting. And never before
Maybe the
seen.
first time.
I just think the Tomba bosses were maybe interesting because of the particular level, the room you were in at the time, not necessarily the bosses themselves.
No, not necessarily the boss himself, but just
Thank you.
playing the game and trying to defeat
The boss battles.
The boss battles,
Yeah.
exactly, was pretty unique.
I mean, the concept was sure, but then you did it, was it 7, 8 times?
What's that?
Yeah, 8 times.
Yeah, the concept
Oh,
was
yeah.
unique, but not having to do it 8 times.
Exactly. So I want to bring up something, and that's the length of the game.
Mm.
Just to complete the game, right? Not to complete it, not completionist it, just to beat the game. Klonoa was, what, 6 hours maybe?
I think less.
Less, yeah.
For a noob, maybe 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crash was probably a couple of hours, honestly, just to beat the
A little
25
bit.
levels. Well, whatever it is, I
Yeah.
guess, depending on how good you are, it could take shorter or longer. But Tomba, I feel like, was the only, like, legitimately length game. Again, if you're just trying to complete it and not completionist it, what
Yeah,
say
it's
you
because
guys?
it's because you spent half the game running around not knowing where you're going.
Yeah, it's kind of a little too long artificially because of that.
Tomba is too long of a game.
Something like
See-
a map would be a good in a game like that. Like that would have been a big improvement.
I don't know. I see Tom's point, but I don't think a map would help.
But so yeah, for an actual intelligent point, I think that like let's say you played the game and you knew where to go. I don't think Tomba would have been that much longer than Crash or Klonoa. Like if you knew what you were doing the whole time.
Wait, I'm not sure about that because the time it would have taken to beat Crash and Klonoa would have also come down a little bit. Probably not as much because it's just 100% platforming basically and no real thinking involved.
Only Klonoa has thinking in the boss fights and stuff.
That's true. There were some puzzles.
Yeah. So that definitely does, but
Yeah, but back to the first point though. I mean, yeah, if you've already played through the game, now you're going to replay it knowing everything. Okay, if that's your argument, then sure.
but that's what I'm saying. Like if you take out the, being lost.
Yeah, that's part of.
Yeah, that's a bad part of the game.
No, not being lost, but trying to figure things out is part of video games. Part of a lot of video games. You like some games where you have to try to figure things out, like the Final Fantasies and the Resident Evils.
I do like those games.
So, all right, yeah.
We're veering off. Let's take a quick break, get answers to last week's Would You Rather question, and be right back. All right, for this week's mid-episode filler Would You Rather answers, we are answering the question we last asked last week, or last episode, in our Crash Bandicoot 2 episode. And we asked, since Crash has various means of transportation in that game, which means of transportation would you choose if you had a choice? And our given choices were a jetpack, the jet ski called the jet board, I think, in this game, or a polar bear. So we put the question up on our social media sites, X, Instagram, Bros Boss Battles, and the winner was the jet ski, the jet board that Crash used in some of the water levels. So that was the fans' answer. So we thank you all who participated, and we'll just finish up this little segment by giving our answers. I'll go first, and I'll say I would probably choose the jetpack because flying's cool, and that would be a way to do it without having to get on a plane. So I will take that, and it was a little easier to control than Diddy Kong's in Donkey Kong 64, so we are improving. What do you guys think?
I'll go next. I agree. I would choose the jetpack as well. Polar bear sounds kind of scary, and the other, the jet board implies water, and sometimes you want to get around not near water.
So it's going to be a clean sweep. I also went with the jetpack. Yeah, the bear seems, like Tom said, scary and also probably hard to control, as was the case in Crash. And the jet board, I'm just not a huge fan of water and being around water, potentially getting wet, so I eliminated that. So jetpack for all of us.
All right, there you have it. Thank you for those that participated. Again, check us out on our social media at Bros Boss Battles on X, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube. Visit our website at brothersandbossbattles.com, and be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get this podcast. All right, back to the regular Brodown episode. All right, so we were talking about, these three games, actually, in our Brodown, and we should continue that discussion now. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
All right. So one thing that I that I liked a lot about Klonoa was that it included quick levels or visions that you could enjoy in quick bursts, and you don't have to commit to sitting down and playing a game for hours and hours. And you can just kind of pick it up, play, feel accomplished that you got something done, and then put the game down and get on with your life.
Yeah, I think the same could be said for Crash. Maybe not Tomba, but Crash, you could play one level, save it, and put it away, and there you go. You completed one of your levels.
In 3 minutes, yeah. I mean, there was no commitment in Tomba because it's open world. Ample save opportunities, when you're going, and plenty of ability to go back and forth between the different areas of the map. There's really no commitment at all there either.
Yeah, but it's not really about commitment. It's more about like, you wouldn't put on the game if you only had 20 minutes to play.
Right. Because you might take
I
it
don't
that
know
long to
about that.
figure out what to do.
Yeah. And sometimes thinking for 20 minutes gets you 20 minutes closer to solving whatever you have to solve. So if you played for 20 minutes, even if you didn't advance in the game, now those 20 minutes worth of things that you've tried, you don't have to try the next time you put it on. So yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a good point. I think being able to play in those short spurts is fun and helps keep the game going. But I'd like to point out, I think, a highlight for Crash, which is the graphics. And I think, again, these are all, I'm not comparing, an Xbox One game to an NES. These are all PlayStation games. I think it's fair game. I just think Crash sort of comes out on top here. As far as the graphics are concerned, the movements, the facial expressions. We talked about how a lot of work was done to make Crash a good looking quote unquote character as far as looking good. Not I don't mean handsome, but so and
Are
he's
you
the
saying
star of the
Crash is
show.
ugly?
No,
I think Klonoa is clearly third here in the graphic department, in my opinion.
I would probably say that is true.
And Tom, you could debate in a second.
I mean, Tomba isn't that great.
No, but I just want even the first stage. Like think back to that, the village of all beginnings. Like you get thrown in there, and it's just like there's just so much going on. I mean, there's a lot of color and movement, whatever. But there's pigs and those pump rocks, and then there's stuff in the background which you can play on as well, as we discussed, like the mansion in the background, and then there's the birds, and Charles is in the tree, and like there really is a lot of detail. Detail, yeah. In the environment, in the game. Whereas Crash, they really focused on Crash himself, so he looks good, but as you're playing through the levels, it's kind of bare a lot of times, and not
Polar bear.
It's unbearable.
Ooh.
So, Tomba himself doesn't look as good as Crash himself, but the atmosphere and the environment, I think there's a lot more going on in Tomba, a lot more detail.
I don't know. The lush greens in Crash,
There's lush greens in Tomba.
yeah, I know.
There was lush greens in Klonoa too.
Was there?
Yeah,
Everything
definitely.
seemed blue.
Yeah, like a grayish blue.
Yeah, everything was a grayish blue.
That's not even true at all.
I think it is.
No, it was very bright and colorful. You could go back and watch our reels that we put on Instagram and YouTube.
Go do that.
So I want to talk about another thing very briefly that I also feel like Klonoa will certainly be third in, and that's
Let's just go back. So Crash wins the graphics. Okay, next. You're talking about
the music. It's a little hard to debate.
I don't know why you think the Tomba music is so good. It's really not.
Oh, come on.
What was like one good song? Can you name one good song in Tomba?
Yeah, Village of All Beginnings, the option menu, the title screen, Bacchus Village.
Bacchus Village was the most
boss
annoying
battles.
thing I've heard.
Okay, that one maybe isn't for everyone's taste, but listen to the boss battle, the regular one, not the final one. The music in that. It's so good. Listen to like the pause. I think it's the pause screen.
Klonoa
Really
had
great.
epic music going on in the boss battles.
Yeah, that is true. Though I think as far as the main theme,
So did Tomba.
I think as far as the main theme is concerned, Crash does win that with that like sliding do like that was a.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no.
it is good. I
think
question.
I might be able to concede that the music in the boss battles was better in Klonoa and Tomba, but I'm not sure that means the music was better overall.
To me, the Crash music did not stand out at all.
I agree. other than sort of maybe one or two songs.
Yeah, but if you're talking about sound, I mean, Crash didn't talk, but I think it had the best, I think, sound mixing and just voice acting of other characters. I mean, Cortex speaks and Coco, Crash's sister, speaks, and there's other little sounds from some of the enemies. So you really don't have that. I mean, and Tomba was text boxes, right?
There is a cutscene where the 100-year-old man speaks, I believe,
All right.
which was
Notwithstanding.
and that was cool, graphically and with the voice.
But
But I'm glad you
Klonoa,
mentioned.
it was just a lot of like annoying noises and like
Yeah, that
grunts
was
and
more
these
annoying. I wanted to play that
syllables.
game on mute, honestly.
Oh,
That's what I would have done if I didn't have to comment on the sound and music for the podcast for our listeners.
You missed out on a lot of good music then.
Well, I would have missed
You
that.
would you would have missed out on a lot of good music then.
But I'm glad you mentioned, sound and not just music, and because the jingle for clearing an event was so great and like just makes me happy every time I hear it.
I think you just have a nostalgic affinity for that than an actual like
Maybe
actually being good.
okay, maybe for that particular 3-second sound, but the music I didn't recall in any sort of, from the past. I'm just playing it for the first time and it's really great. You really just go back and listen.
I don't agree.
Go on
And not even
YouTube.
because of we're defending different games here.
our position.
Go on YouTube.
The
listen,
Tomba music was not a standout at all for
listen
me.
to the soundtrack and listen to the start menu, the main title screen, Village of All Beginnings, and the boss battle in particular, and you're gonna be like, pretty good.
Yeah, sure. All right, I'll do that.
Anybody have any last ditch efforts to defeat Tomba? If not, I kind of want to just emphasize something and kind of goes back to my initial point.
Yeah.
Where it's more than just this one dimension, but like, and I think I briefly touched on it, but just like with the weapons and equipables, again, Tomba had that where you could get the grapple and different pants that made you jump higher, run faster, and made your grapple attack, not your grapple attack, the blackjack attack stronger against enemies. And then you had the grapple where you could latch onto things, and you had the parasol thing that you could glide, and then you had the different fire gem, water gem and wind gem, whatever they called it, that give you different abilities. Like, it's just so much more a complete game. And so I just wanted to, there was specifics that I didn't get to talk about early in the episode that I wanted to kind of wrap up here.
Yeah. Is that those specifics?
Yes.
Oh.
I have one other point that I think will sway the listeners, or maybe not, but I want to mention it anyway. And so that is that I feel that Klonoa has. Now remember, this is a 2.5D platformer category, and I think it has the most engaging platforming of any of the games. And challenging, but also considering verticality and horizontally. So what's it's the horizontal equivalent of that word? I don't know, but anyway, like
Horizontally?
no,
No.
That's an adjective and not a whatever.
noun.
Grammar.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that it really shines in that using the enemies to platform and going from enemy to enemy to get into trickier spots, and then you actually have to like plan how you're going to do some of the platforming for those like timed ones. There's time challenges. You have to platform in a certain way to like actually do it in time. Yeah, and I don't think you get that in the other games, so.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point as to Tomba. I would certainly say that Crash is very platformy. It's probably the quintessential part of that game as well. And
Yeah, but most of it is just jumping forward, you know? Like you never have to like you don't double jump, you don't.
but you do that slide jump to get over certain places.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You do
that's a
have to
good
do
point.
the slide to get certain enemies. Some enemies you have to jump on top of, other enemies you have to spin attack.
well, we're talking about platforming. We're not talking about combat.
Yeah, I know, but that's just another part of the controls and gameplay that is interesting. But as
We're
far
not
as the
talking about controls either.
well, we should be.
Well,
But
let's finish up this argument. Then you can bring up
the
control.
Yeah.
platforming, though, you're sometimes platforming, you're jumping up onto a platform, which we mentioned in the episode that is challenging. And you're doing your side platforming as well, but you're also
When you say up, you mean into the screen.
yeah, upwards on the screen.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
yeah. And then like you're
The Z axis.
yeah, yeah, whatever it is. The but just like you have those bonus pads you could jump on, and that takes you to a different set of platforming, or the death pads that
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's no platforming in the game. That wasn't my argument.
no, I know, but I think it's challenging because you have all these different areas. You have moving stuff. We spoke about that
Yeah.
level where you have like those pillars that have little platforms that are some are like revolving weirdly or rotating weirdly, and you have to
Yeah, and
jump
they're
across those.
slanted. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of challenging platforming in Crash, and
There is.
um, I
I
mean,
want
even
to
if you think
defend.
about it like as those levels where you're on the polar bear or something and you're running down, like you're not jumping on a platform, but the ground is a platform and you have to jump over holes and jump over obstacles, and that is platforming.
Yeah, I would consider
Yeah,
that
yeah,
platforming.
but I guess the point is that it's just all jumping.
I suppose. Yeah, you're not grabbing an enemy and using it to leverage it.
Yeah, it's all just flat jumping.
No, but there is some interesting platform. I want to defend Crash more for a second, even though I
Oh,
think Ant did a good job. But like, there's one part
just
in particular I'm thinking of where you had to jump on boxes, like bouncy boxes that were over a pit, and then you had to land on the, you know, platform, the land after that, hit one of those exclamation boxes, and then if you wanted to collect all the boxes, you had to like re-jump on those boxes to go back the level. And then if you jumped on it the first time, it would break, and you wouldn't be able to get back there. So there's some interesting platforming other than just traditional jumping and where you had to think.
Yeah, it's a bit simplistic, but yeah, I'll give you that. And there's no like ear flutter move either.
But Tomba had platforming where you had to contest the wind, which is
that
really
one part,
challenging.
yeah.
was annoying. But I will say,
And you had
listeners,
to,
please take note that Pete took time out of his schedule to defend Crash. So you should take that as a
wow.
sign.
I just wanted to bring up a good point that you weren't.
Yeah, with such a compelling argument, I made Pete had to buttress it. So about the gameplay, we kind of did touch on this at the beginning. We
Yeah.
were talking about the interesting, what games are interesting, had interesting game parts. So that really was gameplay. We didn't probably say the word gameplay, but that's essentially what it was. But I just like to point out that there were all of these different platforms within each level that you could go on. And again, I'll just reiterate about the different ways you could get gems and the time trials. So that all lent itself not only to the replayability, but to the gameplay in and of itself. And you're not only platforming, you are attacking and getting past enemies, and sometimes you're jumping on them, sometimes you're spin attacking them, sometimes you're sliding into them, and you have to kind of figure out which is the best or the only way you could defeat them in some instances. So
Yeah.
just thought I'd
Similar
throw
to,
that in.
maybe not quite as much, but it's similar to Tomba where you're contesting with enemies and you have to either jump on them or hit them with your blackjack, and maybe you hit them and then they're only kind of stunned, and then they could pop back up unless you jump on them and throw them. So
Yeah,
it's a
and
little
then obviously in Klonoa, the enemies are a huge part of traversing the level, which is quite unique, I'd say. Um, but yeah, so you have to kind of really plan out how you want to use them to get
Hmm.
around.
yeah. So these three games are kind of tied there, I'd say.
All right. I mean, are there any other points, or do we want to wrap it?
My case is rested. I
Yeah.
think I've steamrolled again.
Well, to that end, we'll see what you, the listeners, think. So please let us know in the comments what who you think made the most compelling argument and what is the best of these three 2.5D games. Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, Klonoa, Door to Phantomile, or Tomba. And we'll pause for a couple of seconds. If you want to leave it at that, think about it yourself. Give us your unvarnished opinion. Maybe just cut out right now. Thank you for listening. But if you stick around, we'll give our sort of actual rankings. Which we usually do at the end of these episodes. Again,
declare a winner.
Yeah. Again, go back and if you want our true opinions of the games and just the breakdowns and just information about them, go back to the episodes that we previously recorded on these three games. But all right, what do you guys think as far as who would you declare a winner? This one's tough. This one's very tough for me.
This one is hard for me to to this moment. I'm still not sure what my ranking is.
Yeah, because I went into playing these three games as Crash 2 is gonna wipe the floor, and after playing them, I kind of felt I was least excited every day about turning on Crash 2 as opposed to Tomba or Klonoa. So
that could be maybe because you had played Crash 2 before.
Yeah.
Right.
I just, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, go
ahead.
I could go because I enjoyed all three of these games, but my ranking is very clear to me. Number one is Tomba. It's on my list of favorite games. Crash 2 is second, and Klonoa is third for me. Again, I like all the games, but the divide between each rank is clear to me.
Tom, you have something, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I could go next. So I'm gonna go first with Crash 2. I think it just has the most to offer, honestly. Or well, no, maybe not. It has the most to offer out of as a platformer. Second, I'm going with Tomba. Yeah, I mean, super unique game. It was annoying at times, but definitely enjoyed it and wanted to keep playing it. And then I'll put Klonoa last, but I really enjoy the game too. So by no means is it a bad game, but yeah, I don't know. I just felt like if I was going to try to 100% one of these games, it would be Crash. So that's why I put that first.
All right, and me and Tom should have switched who we were defending because I would probably put Klonoa first. I think that was my favorite. I think it just had a good atmosphere, and I did like the fact that the platforming it was unique and strategic with the having to grab the enemies and sometimes double jumping and floating and all of that. So I actually really enjoyed that and was, really impressed by that. I mean, other than the length, which I didn't really have a problem with, but I could see other people having a problem with, I really enjoyed the game. And by length, I meant it was pretty short. I would go Crash 2 second, just iconic character and nature, and I would go with Tomba last. Definitely the most frustrating out of the three. On the other hand, it probably best embodied a 2.5D platformer if I had to say, just because you are jumping from the background to the foreground and vice versa throughout the whole game, which to me really is the crux of a 2.5D platformer. But I just thought parts of it would have been very annoying without an internet guide. Not that I used it a lot, but I did use it at times. Yeah. So I just thought that was it. But hopefully you all thought that we did good jobs at defending our games, and I guess that means well, we won't declare an overall winner, right? You have our rankings if you decided to listen this far.
Well, we should. We always do.
All right.
This is the same exact thing that happened last time.
I forgot. This is sort of it reminds me too much of the old Brodown episodes, but I guess that was without all of the argument and debate.
So I think that means Crash. So what was your guys' rankings of Crash again?
Tom's was first.
I put yeah.
And mine was second, and yours was second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's Crash, Tomba, Klonoa. You guys both picked Klonoa last, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then Tomba had a 1, a 2, and a 3. Right?
Yeah. So Crash, Tomba, Klonoa.
Crash it is, but it's very tight.
Yeah. Let's not take anything away from the other two. These were all great games and should all be played by all of our listeners.
I would also love to play
and
Crash,
even more.
Crash 3, Tomba 2, and Klonoa 2, whatever that one was called.
Klonoa 2.
Yeah.
Lunate's Veil.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe we could have a rematch category one of these days.
Yeah, that might be fun.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Catch us on our social media platforms, X, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. Or on our website at brothersandbossbattles.com. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get this podcast in order to get our latest content. In a couple of weeks, we will be discussing the first game of a new category. Be sure to check that out and see you then.